Heyo, Packer fans, what's going on? Welcome to the Packers Trilogy podcast presented by the Wisconsin Sports Trilogy, podcast for diehard Packer fans by diehard Packer fans. I am your host, Trevor. You can find me on Twitter at Bender_Trevor. You can find my writing at Dairyland Express. And I am joined, as always, with my good buddy Tyler, aka T+. You can find Tyler on Twitter at Tyler Kurth. And you can find his writing at Reviewing the Brew. As always, you can find all of our content on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Trilogy_pod, and on YouTube as well. I'm hoping to get some more YouTube videos up. I've been slacking recently, but hopefully I'll get a little bit more up there. So check those out, the Wisconsin Sports Trilogy podcast on YouTube. Hit subscribe, hit the like button. That would mean a lot to us. Tyler, we are here to talk about the Eagles game that's coming up on Sunday, which for some reason is not a noon game on Sunday, which I'm not really sure why, but that is what is happening. Before we get to that Eagles game, Tyler, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a crazy Wednesday, but I guess that's better than a boring Wednesday. So been rough at work, at least been staying extra, and when you're salary, you don't get paid more, so that always sucks. But now I get to come here and drink some beer, pulled out an Oberon tonight, so despite the chilly weather, wanted a little bit of summer left yet, so can't complain.
Yeah, Oberon, always a great beer to pull out of the fridge. I have not had one in a while, and you're making me a little jealous here. And now you can't find them anywhere, so that's great.
I find them all the time here, actually. There's still some in stores. Beaver Dam just doesn't like craft beer.
That's not a bad thing. Hey, one time I found at a Quick Trip in Portage, I think it was February of 2019, I found Summer Shandy in February. So I was pretty happy with that. So my girlfriend bought me a craft beer advent calendar from Mobcraft. So if you don't know, Mobcraft makes some crazy, crazy beer. And so this is the one that's December 2nd. Bad shit crazy. And I don't know if you can read that, but that's a coffee brown ale. It is very dark, and it legit just tastes like coffee. So it's pretty good. Pretty good if you like coffee, at least. Well, Tyler, I'm sorry that you worked late. I had so much stuff to do after work today. I left work early, so I guess it evens out. And I left like an hour early, and I think you said you left an hour late. So it evened out. As long as I can get some of your pay now, that would be helpful. All right. Let's talk some Packers football. Before we get to that Eagles matchup, though, I do want to take a step back, as we always do, and look back at that Bears game. So what are kind of your final thoughts from that big performance on Sunday Night Football?
I just wanted to take a moment and kind of laugh over the fact we put up 41 points on this Bears defense, which is supposed to be all high and mighty, which I think it just says how great this Packers offense is. I mean, I think I remember earlier in this season of podcast, I'm like, I'm not going to say the Packers aren't going to score 35 until they prove me wrong. They're obviously not putting up that much, but they're getting damn close every game. So this offense is a force to be reckoned with. And while it's not necessarily Bears game related, I feel like we should talk about Tavon Austin a little bit, because everyone's going crazy over the signing of him. And then, of course, subsequently Darius Shepard being cut. So I'll let you start, because you were in love with Shep last year. And you're not so much this year. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I had a lot of, I was excited about Shep last year. And still was going into this year, and it just he hasn't gotten it. He hasn't proven that he can play on Sundays at an NFL level, and I completely understand why he's cut. I imagine no one else is going to sign him. I imagine the Packers will bring him back on the practice squad. He does have to clear waivers for that. Like I said, I can't imagine anyone is just drooling over signing Darius Shepard after what he's put on tape. But to me, I get it. Tavon Austin, the money they're spending for him, I think like the difference is like, a couple $100,000, which NFL standard, that's nothing. It sounds great to you and I, Tyler, but NFL standards, that's virtually nothing. So not a lot of change there. And you get some upside. Tavon Austin's getting up there now. I think he was the 8th overall pick in the 2013 draft. So yes, Aaron Rodgers has another first-round pick to throw to. And it's something that I don't expect a lot from him, but I do expect competent play on special teams, and that at the very least is going to be a bonus. If Tyler Ervin can't come back or isn't on his way back right now, which he was limited in practice on Wednesday, so hopefully that's a good sign. He could be Tavon Austin now, could be that kind of Tyler Ervin type of player. He can be that gadget player, the guy that's running jet motions, those types of things. So that is one thing that I am excited about, to see how LaFleur uses him. Now, again, like I said, I'm not expecting a whole ton from Tavon Austin, especially this week, but even going the rest of the season, if he makes a few splash plays, I'll be more than excited for that. But I don't expect a whole bunch from him.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what kind of works well towards him being a gadget player is like he grew up early on his career with the Rams and was there when Sean McVay first took over. So he at least had 1, maybe 2 seasons kind of with McVay, which is obviously somewhat similar of an offense. They run similar concepts. So like how that goes in with Matt LaFleur, maybe it's a little bit quicker adjustment to learning the offense, learning like the signals or the terminology, whatever it may be that he all has to learn. So I think gadget player is that's like the ceiling for him right now. And if you get a splash play, that's great. If he makes a splash play on special teams, that'd be fantastic as well. But I'm not expecting him to go out there and catch 5 passes for 100. That's just not realistic.
Yeah, and if he gives you a play a game, whether that be a 15-yard punt return that takes it from what would be at, the 20-yard line to the 35, 40, 50-yard line. If he just breaks something like that a game, and you can't really expect that every game, but he does that one game, next game, end around for 20 yards. And, if he gives you 1, maybe 2, if you're lucky, type of those gadget or special teams plays, that's going to be a win. And if there's another player out there that you have to account for as a defense, you throw him out there, and every time he's out there, throw him on a jet motion, and maybe 60% of the time you don't give it to him, but 40% you do. Defenses are going to have to respect that and have to be watching that motion. And there's just a lot of things you can do with him, like you can Tyler Ervin. I think in terms of what their use is going to be in this offense, I think it's similar. So I think that's kind of what you can expect. Now, who's a better player at this point in their career? I don't know. Tyler Ervin wasn't much at all until he came to Green Bay. He didn't do a lot, kind of bounced around the league. Tavon Austin has a little bit more pedigree. He is 29, 30 at this point in his career, so you don't really know how much he's got on the legs. But, for half a season into the postseason, if he can make those few plays, it's going to be worth the signing. And that's all I'm expecting at this point. I'm not expecting him to be more of the offense. But that's definitely something exciting for Packer fans, but I do want to temper expectations, because it's not going to be, all of a sudden we're going to get, we signed Tavon Austin and we have our number 2 receiver. Allen Lazard's our number 2 receiver. MVS is our number 3. EQ is, at this point, is probably number 4. And then Tavon Austin comes into play. So, because we started to see more role for EQ kind of going into or coming out of that Bears game. So I imagine that will continue, and Tavon Austin is just going to be kind of thrown in spot duty, I think. So we'll have to see how that kind of progresses. For this Eagles game, I really don't expect much of anything, but we'll have to wait and see for that. So since you rudely changed the subject, Tyler, I want to get back to that Bears game. What do you think about that Bears game now that you have time to think about it?
I mean, yeah, I kind of touched on the offense a little bit. I haven't heard many people talking about Preston Smith a lot. I saw a stat today saying that Za'Darius is somehow having like a top 5 edge rusher season, which really, really shocked me. He seemed rather quiet. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to look for the tweet now. But I mean, other than that, I think it's just another good week to kind of solidify the fact that, hey, we have a great offense. It doesn't matter who we're going to play this year. We're going to put up a ton of points, and that's really reassuring going forward.
Yeah, that is really, really, really reassuring. That's something that, if this defense, not that they're going to force 3 turnovers and get a defensive touchdown every week, but if they can be opportunistic, catch the interceptions that are thrown to them, most quarterbacks aren't going to throw you 3 like Mitch Trubisky is, but, you catch the ones that are thrown to you, you're opportunistic, you give this offense an extra possession or 2 a game, that should be enough so long as the offense shows up. And that's kind of what I got from this football game. Now, I think the defense played fairly well. It was kind of weird, I thought. You take out the fourth quarter, they give up 3 points, but I don't think it was like a dominant time for the defense. Like, it didn't seem like they were just all over the field and 3 and out after 3 and out. It didn't really feel like that, but they did get the job done. They did a good job of getting the Bears off the field when they needed to. Got those interceptions, things like that, to really propel them. And then the fourth quarter happened, and obviously the Packers with the lead don't play in the fourth quarter. So that's another thing that could be concerning. But if you have a 41-3 lead, I don't think even the Chiefs are coming back from that in one quarter. So that's something to monitor. I pulled up the PFF. I told you guys I was going to get either DVOA or PFF. I decided to try PFF just because they have a little bit more in terms of statistics. So I thought a little bit more bang for my buck. So that is what I went with. I have the defensive grades up for Chicago. They had 3 guys over 70 for the PFF grade, which those are solid grades, right? Even their next closest guy on defense had 67. That's still a pretty solid grade, not great, but they had 3 guys, and all of them were their frontline guys. Khalil Mack was 2 at 74.3. Mario Edwards, he is a defensive tackle, had an 88.1, so a very good game from him. He was very solid in rush per PFF. And then Brett Urban, the left end, was also above 70 at 70.4. So outside of that, they did not have much contributions. The 4 of the top 5 players were Khalil Mack or legit defensive linemen. So they didn't have a lot in terms of good coverage play, and that should make a lot of sense. But it was not a team that played overly well. Eddie Jackson, who is one of their best players, 49.9. He was tied for 15th on their team. Just not a good performance from them. And after that performance against the Colts, I feel like it's not just this Bears defense had a bad game. I think this Packers offense is that good, which is very, very exciting. All right. So let's go into the injury report here a little bit. I'll go through like I normally do, name off the players. We'll start with did not participate, Corey Linsley. He sounds like 3 to 6 weeks was the last report I saw with that knee injury. So hopefully back for a postseason run. I imagine a lot of Elton Jenkins at the center position with John Runyon at left guard. We'll have to see for sure now that they have a full week to prepare. I'm not exactly sure, but I would guess that's the way they're going to go. Limited participants. EQ was limited with a knee injury. J.K. Scott, Darnell Savage with a back injury. Lucas Patrick with a toe. Big Dog, Mercedes Lewis with a knee. Alan Lazard was limited with that core injury. I imagine he'll be on the injury report every week with that because I imagine it is sore. Kevin King limited with the Achilles. Josh Jackson limited by a concussion. Tyler Irvin, those ribs have him limited. And Chris Barnes was limited with a calf. And Chris Barnes is coming off of that COVID injured reserve list. And lastly, full participants are Will Redmond and Jair Alexander. For the Eagles, did not participate are Fletcher Cox with a neck injury. I did not know about that. That doesn't sound good. Probably doesn't sound like he's going to play, which, like the Akeem Hicks thing we were talking about, you want to beat teams when they're the best they're at. In that regard, that's kind of lost for the Packers, but Fletcher Cox is a very good player, so that makes this a little bit easier for them, but I hope all is well. Neck injuries always sound scary. Hope Fletcher Cox is okay. Rudy Ford, the safety with a hamstring injury, did not participate. Their last two were limited participants, TJ Edwards and Zach Ertz. So that is the injury report. Tyler, do you have any thoughts from the injury report?
Not a whole lot to add, really. I mean, he's kind of summed it up well. We'll see what happens on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go ahead and start talking more specifically about this matchup. What is one thing that you're looking at that we need to do in order to win this football game?
I don't know. Usually I try and answer this question as to what would happen for the Eagles to go absolutely right for them to win this game. And this week I'm going to take a little bit different approach. I'm just going to say I want the Packers defense to continue to force turnovers. I think we could win this game if we didn't, but if you take a look back, obviously this was last year in 2019. We lost that game against the Eagles. Granted, it was early in the year. Devontae Adams was on a tear and then went out in the fourth quarter with that turf toe. But the Packers did not force any turnovers that game. And we've been doing a really good job of that the last 2 weeks. 5 versus the Colts and the Bears put together. So I think this defense, is it starting to heat up? Or is it just we've been playing some quarterbacks and teams that are prone to more mistakes? Well, we know this Eagles team is very prone to turnovers. Carson Wentz leads the league in pretty much every turnover category. So I think you need to force this team to do what they do best, and that's hopefully flip the field on short position. Let's have the Packers offense score off some of these turnovers, and let's make it a blowout. I don't want a close game. This should not be a close game.
No, it shouldn't. If going into these 2 weeks against the Bears and the Eagles, if I was going to say there was going to be a close game, it would have been against the Bears. Granted, I also thought the Packers were going to win by 38 to the Jags, and that didn't happen. But to me, this Packers-Eagles matchup should be pretty one-sided. You mentioned the defense committing turnovers, and yeah, I don't think it's going to matter even if they don't. It's always nice to kind of get on a roll, get that swagger, that confidence going to the stretch run of the season, and hopefully they can start playing a little bit better and a little bit more consistently. But you look at this Eagles team, their offense is flat out bad, real bad. Their best week in terms of PFF grades for their offense was against the Steelers in week 5. That is their only game in the 70s. Everything else is 70 or lower. Their highest other game looks like 69.3. Nothing overly impressive, and they have some matchups in there, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Bengals. They had some matchups where they should be able to get some points on the board, all those types of things, and they just haven't done it this year. The thing I'm looking at, though, is in the trenches, and specifically when we're on offense. So this Eagles team is very, very good defensively, specifically defensively by, I believe it is rush. Let me make sure here. Pass rush. So they have the best pass rush PFF grade in the league. So they're number one at 86.3. Then the Steelers at 84.1. The Bills at 81.5. Those are the three teams that have 80 plus. And the Eagles are closer to 90 than they are 80. So they have been very, very good in that regard. They've also been very good in special teams. They're number 2 in special teams. But that's kind of where the good parts of this team kind of end, is at the pass rush and the special teams. So I want to look at this pass rush specifically because it is a very good team rushing the passer. Their overall defense is only okay. The Packers per PFF overall defense is 15. The Eagles are 14th. And the only reason the Eagles are 14th is because of that pass rush. The Packers beat them in every other category other than that pass rush, but that is such a dominant part of their team that it's an issue. Now, let's look at the Packers offensive line. This is the matchup for me. This is the thing that needs to happen in order for us to win this game, is this offensive line needs to play like the offensive line they have been. And now Peter Bukowski tweeted out stats about the Packers offensive linemen. So I'll just read his tweet. All 5 of the Packers offensive linemen are top 10 in their position in ESPN's pass block win rate. Billy Turner, number 1 for offensive tackles, which blows my mind. That doesn't feel right. David Bakhtiari is number 3 for offensive tackles. Corey Linsley is number 3 for centers. Lucas Patrick is 9 among guards. Elton Jenkins, 10 among guards. So obviously we're not going to see Corey Linsley in this game, and it's going to be Elton Jenkins at center and, like I said, probably John Runyon at guard. So not the same lineup there for the offensive line, but that's going to be the matchup that I'm going to be watching, is that Eagles pass rush front 7 type of unit against this Packers offensive line, because this Packers offensive line is very good, and I think they proved that, or at least stated that on Sunday night, but now they need to prove it against a really, really, really good team. Now, the Bears have a good front 7. They have a good defense, so I don't think those numbers should be overlooked or anything, but now 2 weeks in a row, let's go out and prove how good of an offensive line we are. Let's stymie this. Basically, their only advantage, their only thing they're good at other than special teams is pass rushing. So let's try to get better, iron sharpen iron, but let's go out on top on this one. That's what I will be watching for this matchup. Tyler, let's move into our stats. Do you have any stats at all for this game?
I do have some stats, and thanks for bringing up the pass rush. I think I remember, sorry, I'm going to backtrack, that I heard they like to blitz a lot, right? Like with the Bears, they rely on like a Khalil Mack or somebody beating somebody one-on-one. With the Eagles, they send pressure from just about everywhere. So like communication along the line, I think, is going to be important to watch, kind of like you were talking about there, like the running back picking up the blitz. Those little things like that is going to make a big difference in this game. As for my stats, I wanted to point out a stat regarding Robert Tonyan. So throughout the rest of the year here, he needs to go on watch because he could get close to breaking the Packers receptions record for tight ends. He's currently on pace for 54, and the record is 62. So if he can make up 7 catches somewhere in there, he'll beat Jermichael Finley's record from 2011. So I think that would be really cool. I mean, we all know he's had a great year, especially catching touchdown passes, but to like add some pedigree in terms of reception totals on top of there would be really awesome. So, while it's not necessarily related to the Eagles, I am going to be watching that the rest of the year.
Yeah, that is interesting. And one I don't think I was really expecting. I know Big Bob has been pretty good this year, and I like what he's brought. It did not feel like he's been catching that many footballs to be, close to Jermichael Finley, who in recent memory has been our best tight end that we've had. Jared Cook kind of came on late in the year that we had him, but he was only here a year. And like I said, in the beginning of the year, it wasn't much from him. So Jermichael Finley's probably been the best real threat we've had at tight end. And even though I thought Robert Tonyan has been good, that number just kind of surprised me. I didn't think that he would be in that realm at all this year, but it is exciting. And hopefully if he doesn't get it this year, he can continue to progress and just throttle it next year, because I really hope that happens. So let's go into my stats. So obviously now it's not DVOA, but at least I have something better than just raw statistics, because I feel like you can go out and look at the yards per game averages, point per game averages, and figure out what that means. And now that DVOA and PFF are behind a paywall, maybe you don't want to pay for it. So here you go. You can get it for free here. The Eagles, offensively per PFF, ranked 30th in the league per PFF. Pretty rough. Just so you know, that offense we just played ranked 27th. So the Eagles are somehow worse than that Bears offense, which is dumbfounding to me. Passing the ball, they're ranked 27th per PFF, rushing 17th. Defensively, a little bit better. I think I mentioned this earlier. They're ranked 14th. Pass rush, again, number 1 in the league. Coverage grade per PFF is 10th in the league. Rush defense, 17th. Special teams is ranked 2nd, as I mentioned, and overall that means they're 28th in the league. Packers, offensively ranked 5th. I believe they're tied with a few other teams. Now, I don't have it pulled up here off the top of my head. Let's see. They're tied. No, they are not tied. They are in 5th. The overall ranking, they're tied for 4th with the Steelers, Rams, and Titans there. But for the offense, their passes ranked number 1 in the league per PFF, and it's really not all that close. There's 4 teams in the 90s, and Green Bay's at 92.4. Kansas City, the next closest, is over a point below them at 91.3. And Seattle and Houston round out those teams that have 90 or above. So very, very good pass offense. Clearly, rush offense ranked 19th. Defensively, we are ranked 15th per PFF. Pass rush, 19th. Coverage, 25th, which kind of surprised me. And rush defense, 12th. Rush defense is 12th? What? Special teams, 25th. And then, like I mentioned before, overall, we're tied for 4th. And one thing I do want to mention, even though that rush defense is ranked 12th, and I've mentioned this before, so PFF has backed me up here. I think the rush defense is better than what it looks like because the tackling's so damn bad. And the tackling makes the rush defense look worse because they're giving up more and more yards. So I believe I mentioned that in my recap article for Dairyland Express of that's part of the reason why this rush defense looks so bad is because the tackling's terrible. Tackling 27th in the league there. So that's definitely something that needs to improve because the rush defense really does not look that terrible until you get to the tackling part. And Tyler asked me to watch a big run from the Bears. And so I did. And so you were right. You said that Kamal Martin got blocked, right?
Yep.
I don't remember. I think you said left guard. It was actually the center that got up to him. It looked like they were going to have to. The play-in was to double team. Looks like Kenny Clark. Really didn't have to do that. The defensive line was slanting in the way that the offense actually wanted them to. So it made it easier on that guard to get the block. So then they don't have to double team. He gets up to Kamal, and Kamal probably would have made the play, but that center got just enough of Kamal. He still almost did make the play. Got just enough of him. I know there was a little bit of a read option, but Christian Kirksey, what in the world are you doing? And to me, I would rather protect the running back, get to the running back, make that play first, because that's the guy that can gash you. Yeah, the quarterback, maybe the quarterback gets 15 yards, but he's not going to go 57. And Christian Kirksey was the only guy. He was literally unblocked and couldn't get to the play, which, again, I know it's a read option, or it looks like a read option, but Christian Kirksey has to get to that play. He looked absolutely horrendous in this football game. And it wasn't just this play, but this one was the big one because the Packers defense did relatively well outside of this play. And the PFF grade matches what we're seeing in this game for Christian Kirksey, because he was truly, truly terrible. And I am very upset because I thought he was going to be a guy that comes in and gives you some good juice and can be a little bit more effective than Blake Martinez. He is a lot worse than Blake Martinez as of right now. PFF graded him at 27. Ooh, 27. That is truly, truly terrible. And you want to know what's even crazier? He's had 2 games in the 20s, 27.1 against Chicago. And then against New Orleans, he had 29.4. So not good in either of those. And then he's had 2 other games below 50 against Minnesota and Detroit. And he's had 2 okay games against Jacksonville and Indianapolis, 66 and 68 there for that one, or basically 69, 68.9 against the Colts. But 2 games, really? I had a lot of hope for this guy. I really thought he was going to be a big-time player for this defense. He has not been. And it's time for Kamal Martin and Chris Barnes to take over because Christian Kirksey just looks slow. He looks like he cannot play at this speed, and it's really frustrating. I really thought he was going to be a big part of this defense, and he either needs to play a lot better or he needs to get less snaps. And the other thing that's kind of concerning is, you know, for the most part, his tackling has been good, but he's, again, had 2 games below 30 in tackling. His other games have been 65.5, 82.6, 78.4, and 71.9. So it's not like all the time he's terrible at tackling, but he does have these games where he struggles immensely tackling, and that's something that we needed him to be better at. And really, we need to see him improve there. That's definitely something I hope gets better, because I watched that play, that 57-yard touchdown run, like 18 times at this point, and I just don't understand. Like, it looks like it's hard to tell because Kirksey's like halfway on the film and halfway not, so it's really hard to tell for sure where he's looking. But to me, it looks like he's looking at Montgomery the whole time and just doesn't explode until 2 steps too late. And then he takes a terrible angle on the ball and goes at him. And by the time he realizes he's too slow, he has to cut up and run straight behind him. If you're running straight behind someone, that means your angle was horrendous. So that needs to be better. And we'll just, I guess we'll have to wait and see, like anything, if he can improve and get a little bit better, a little bit more consistent, and be the player that we kind of thought we were getting when the signing happened. Tyler, do you have anything else on this Eagles game, or are you ready for some score predictions?
Oh, man. Obviously, all that talk about Kirksey's really disappointing because, like, Martinez got a lot of the blame last year for the run game, and especially in that NFC Championship game. And now you have this. Those are some really low graded scores out there. And yeah, it's really rather disappointing. So I don't know. Hopefully the Packers they see who the better player is out there, and I mean they saw us start Rashawn Gary technically in the Bears game over Preston Smith. It lit a fire under his ass. So maybe Kirksey just needs a little bit more of the same thing. So that would be obviously ideal because we know when he's right, he could be a difference maker. He just hasn't been for most of the season.
Yeah, and I just went and looked at Blake Martinez's PFF grades. Christian Kirksey, again, had 2 under 30. Blake Martinez's worst game was against the Eagles, of all teams, and it was 37.6. His next lowest was 59.8, so barely below 60. He has been good for the Giants. And one that I thought it was the right move to move on. Again, I will say I was wrong. I thought Christian Kirksey was going to be better, and Kirksey just hasn't been. And it is definitely something that I can say now probably was a miss to not try to re-sign him. Now, I can't remember the money he's making, so maybe that part of it doesn't make sense, but definitely the replacement we got isn't the replacement I thought we were getting.
I certainly agree 100%. That might be a good article there for you, Martinez versus Kirksey. So you're welcome. I get 10% commission. All right. As for score predictions, man, it's not even going to be close. I'm going to go 42-20. I'm going 6 Packer touchdowns. And I need 3 from Devonta Adams to get him back on track for his 20 this year. So 3 of them that way. Aaron Jones hasn't found the end zone in a while. I'll give 2 to him. And then we've been talking about Tanya, and we'll give him the last one. So extra bold in my predictions, even giving out all the touchdowns as well.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that. Let's see here. I know this was coming, but I did not think about a score prediction before this. So I think the offensive line is going to do enough to slow down that pass rush. So I think the offense is going to be fine. And if they slow down the pass rush, it's flat out, it's not going to be close. Because if they are able to slow them down and make them not get to Aaron Rodgers, that's going to be absolutely huge. And that's going to be something that I think is going to make this game not remotely close. So I think that is what's going to happen because I have faith in this offensive line that they're going to be able to do the job and get Rodgers and keep Rodgers kind of upright, healthy, all of those types of things. So then that's going to be important. And I was kind of dragging that out so I could get to some stats I wanted to pull up. Aaron Rodgers, with no pressure in his face this year, has a PFF grade of 96.9. That is unbelievable. He has a passer rating of 126.4 with no pressure in his face. When he's not being blitzed, a little bit different metric, but kind of similar. 93.8 when he is being blitzed. That doesn't necessarily mean there's pressure in his face. He's 83.8. So basically, you keep him clean, you got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. We know this, right? But if he's under pressure, and there has been 93 dropbacks that he has been under pressure, his PFF grade has been 57.6. Now, I'm going to be using PFF grades. I think taking them with a grain of salt is a good thing. I think using other stats to kind of supplement them, using your own eye test, you can disagree with them, but that much of a difference is a lot. And you're going to see a drop when quarterbacks are pressured compared to when they're not. But it's literally best quarterback of all time when he's not being pressured to a subpar quarterback when he is being pressured. So again, I think that matchup in the trenches, the Packers offensive line versus the pass rush that the Eagles are going to set forth, is one that we need to win, because like I mentioned, Aaron Rodgers is a different quarterback. You want to know one example of Aaron Rodgers being a different quarterback under pressure? Watch the second through fourth quarter of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, and that will tell you he's a different quarterback under pressure. So that's one thing. I mentioned it already. I think that's the most important part of this game for the Packers. I still think that the offensive line is going to handle it enough. Maybe they do give up some pressures, some sacks in this game, but the Packers are going to prevail because they're the better football team. And I think it's going to be pretty high scoring. I think high scoring for the Packers, I should say. 42-17. I don't think it's going to be close. The only way it can be close is if that pass rush wrecks the game. That's the only way it can happen. Zadarius Smith wrecked the game against the Vikings last year. I think it was the second game in the series last year. And that is something that could happen in this game. I don't think it's going to. That's why I think 42-17, mainly because, again, this Philly offense is not any better than the Bears offense. So I think it's going to be a rout. I think the Packers are inevitably going to give up some garbage time touchdowns, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think the Packers are going to have a great game, and they're going to move to 9-3 now. So that'll be exciting. Make sure you come back here for our recap podcast. Make sure you check out the Brewers Trilogy podcast. We're going to have a bonus episode this week. We are going to be recording that soon. We are recapping the tender deadline for the Brewers. Who's non-tendered, who's tendered. Make sure you check that out. Make sure you check out Tyler and I's Bucks podcast. We'll have another one coming out this week as well, but make sure you guys are checking all of those things out. Best way to do that, follow us at Trilogy_pod. Subscribe on YouTube, the Wisconsin Sports Trilogy Podcast. And until next time, go Pack Go.
GPG.